And we are live here to chat about what we have watched this week. I will say I am very much like a multi monitor person. And as I was just sing songing our intro, a tweet came across my screen of an unnamed ice skater doing a little quad. So that really felt like the appropriate like background visual for me leading into this week. I will say, related to that, I also watched like a million hours of ice skating this week that we're not going to get into, but just know if it seems like it's slim pickings in what shows I watched this week, or if I didn't watch some of the things that I said I was going to get into, it's because I screamed at ice dancers all weekend, which was just really fun for everybody involved. We are joined by Kate, and I am going to have Kate kick off hard news with personal news. Kate, tell us what's coming up here shortly in Aries season for you.
Oh, it's my 21st birthday this weekend.
Yay, so
Yay.
excited. What are your plans?
Uh, Dinner with one friend that I haven't seen in a very long time
Aw,
after
fun.
work. So,
After work. You're really joining adulthood in full stride there. Well, that is very exciting. I am sure it I'm sure a 21st birthday, I would say in the middle of Corona, but really it's like in the end of Corona. I really am like believing and willing it to happen. I'm sure it is not maybe what you envisioned your 21st birthday being like, but I hope it is fabulous regardless. Ben Levine in the chat says, "Hello, it's been a while." Hello, Ben. Carrie says, Cammie, speaking of
no.
skaters, you should watch I, Tonya. If you have not, I have watched I, Tonya. That is not only an iconic movie with an iconic cast, it also has some of my favorite moments of like visibly 35-year-old people playing a 15-year-old, which ties in perfectly to it being Kate's 21st birthday. She is a wee baby.
You're not the first person to say that.
And I'm sure I won't be the last. Carrie says 21. I remember
No.
21, says the really old dude me. Carrie, I just turned 30 a couple months ago,
Oh,
so I'm right there with you. I am a cusp millennial, but I am a millennial, and Kate is strongly in the Gen Z category. So, our Gen Z representative, even though really you weren't born in Gen Z generation, you were born in like Regency generation, and like an evil witch was like, she has too much like strong opinion, energy to her. We're gonna force her to go to 2021. Earlier this year, I
so she can live
celebrated.
out her antiquated disabilities,
Yes. Yeah.
just like my antiquated speech in modern times, but have my fun over analytical brain just go massively crazy. It's why.
Yeah. It's you win some, you lose some. In my news, much less exciting, I still have Invisalign in my mouth. I know the crowd goes wild, the cheers, the applause. I actually have audio queued up that I could create applause sound effects at any time. I'm just choosing not to. Um, I still have Invisalign in my mouth, which is why I sound absolutely indecipherable and ridiculous, more so than I would on normal occasions. But I like to convince myself that it's not as noticeable as what it sounds like to me. Let me know in the comments. Carrie says, I remember 30, says the 17 years you're senior still. Carrie, you are above us all. You've transcended age. You are a being at this point. Time is not encapsulating the essence of what you are. That's what's going on. So, other news we have for this week. I have noted that there is a new kid cast on The Flash. I have kid in quotation marks because he is, the CW age, which is an energy, not an age. But we're going to talk about that when we get to Flash. Kate, do you have any news you'd like to bring to the table in relation to TV and movies?
Other than the new Netflix book adaptation of Shadow and Bone that we both saw this week, no, not really.
Let's roll that into news. Actually, I want to talk about that right off the bat, if that's okay, just because I'm very excited to.
Okay.
So, Shadow and Bone. I haven't read it. Kate hasn't read it either, but I'm actually going to start it as soon as possible. It's a book series, as I understand it. I know literally nothing. I knew absolutely nothing about this other than I had like kind of heard it mentioned on like book Twitter and book TikTok and stuff like that last couple months, but it was kind of in one ear and out the other until the trailer dropped. Actually, I think the trailer like leaked a day in advance or whatever. And Kate and I both saw it and we both immediately were like, we want to read this book. So I'm all in. I'm going to start reading it. Kate, as I understand it, you're going to start reading it too, even though you've got like 5 million things on your plate, like going to school and working jobs and internships and everything. What's a whole book series to throw in there? So tell me your reactions to the trailer.
I actually said I was going to read it before I even watched the trailer, but I
Mm.
remember a few months ago actually seeing like news of casting and stuff, and I initially thought it was going to be in a different language, but they did it in English, which is at least I don't have to watch subtitles. Um, but that book series has been on my to be read list for quite some time. I only read about one or two YA books or series every year. I don't have the patience for it, but sometimes I just want to read garbage. So I hadn't time to get reading it, but it was something that I knew I probably would like. It's the fantasy genre bending YA stuff that's really popular right now. So I'm excited to read it. I hope it's actually good versus the last thing I read. But
I think you cut out there at the end, but you're excited to read it, is what I got as the last statement. So I'm going to go with that. I'm excited to read it as well. I could gather from, okay, so obviously I'm going to jump straight into the ships. I'm not apologizing for who I am. I could gather from the trailer that there is a love triangle, which is no surprise. It's a young adult fantasy like book series. Of course there's a love triangle, but it struck me that this love triangle has like obviously it's a bunch of stereotypes, but they have the like best friend guy from her hometown person, and then they have the villain person, and I'm like instantly torn by that because when it comes to like the best friend guy from her hometown, like guy who knows her really well type of thing, I tend to like that. So like if you contrast that with like if you take that and look at like the Hunger Games, you have like Gail and Peta, and I was like, I like Gail so much more than Peta, not just because Peta was annoying, which she like super was, but also because Gail was like somebody she knew really well, could fight alongside, trusted her, and they had like a really good rapport and like friendship and stuff, and I'm like a sucker for that. So I see a guy like that in the trailer and I'm like, great, love it, right up my alley. Then they had the villain, so you have like this kind of like dark and light whatever pairing, which we're going to talk about that a little bit when we talk about Supergirl. I'm such a sucker for like this whole Beauty and the Beast, Phantom and Christine, whatever thing. So you've got me torn between two tropes I like, because if for most other series where there's been a love triangle, I either dislike both sides of the love triangle or I only like one. Here, I may only like one, but judging from the trailer, it looks like it's at least both tropes that I like. So what am I supposed to do?
I don't know. I don't normally like love triangles. I find them very annoying. Like there's only two men that she has to pick from. Whereas the last series I read was three different ones, and I was really bored by the end of it. But I will also agree with you. They're really pulling in the quality tropes to make the competition. So at least it has to be loved. Use out of friends to lovers. Thank you, Fitzsimmons. But I am interested to see how they do the evil versus good, and they're definitely playing with the light versus dark trope. I mean, it's basically the entirety of the trailer, so that I'm willing to give it a try. We shall see.
I get the sense that, like, okay, so since it's a book series, I get the sense that the first book isn't like, if you have somebody who's going to be a villain, okay, and they need to be believably a villain, then A, they need to do some very bad things, you know. B, they need to be a villain for long enough for you to see them as, like, it can't be like he was a villain in the first book, but by book 8 or like however many there are in the series, you know, he's been a good guy for 6 years, you know, like it can't be any of that. Like they have to be a villain for longer than they are a hero. It doesn't have to wait until the last second for them to like get redeemed. It doesn't have to be in the last chapter, but they need to be a villain for substantially longer than they've been a hero. Like to me, it's just like very the you know, it's like screen time. Have you been bad for more screen time than you've been good? That can start to put you in anti-hero villain category for me, which I know is a very like stark way of looking at it. Therefore, this first season or whatever it is coming out, I'm sure he'll be more bad than good. So if for no other reason than that, I suspect I'm going to lean more towards the BFF first time around, because the beginning of Friends to Lovers, where it's a lot of like, we think this is unrequited and there's a lot of pining, is sometimes the best part. Whereas the end of Villains, aka, ooh, controversial opinion, but the end of the latest Star Wars trilogy is always the best and most romantic. So maybe I just spoiled the ending for myself by thinking it through. But we'll get there when we get there. I'm surprisingly unspoiled on the series, but maybe that's because not all the books are out. I don't actually know. All right, I have an agenda in front of me, and we are 21 minutes into this, and we've already fully broken from the agenda, but that's okay. It was for the best, because headliner top of our agenda is DC TV, namely Supergirl, Flash, and Batwoman. Now, Kate, I know you love yourself and you haven't watched this, but just to do my due diligence, I'm asking, have you watched any DC TV this week?
I watched so I watched some old clips of Lois and Clark because sometimes I just need the sitcom. I needed it. I needed it for my soul. And then I watched actually like the new Superman and Lois. I watched episode 4, and I am fully on board with you. I don't think I was like as I don't care about Clark as you were, but I very much know that Lois's storyline is the most interesting, and the brother dynamic is done surprisingly well, especially since they have guys cast that were 3 points. We're doing great all around. It's a very cinematic thing. I do have a question.
Yes.
Is this actually in the Arrowverse, and is it on the same planet as the Flash? When is it?
That is a good question. I don't know
Like
for sure the answer, but I believe the answer is that it is in the Arrowverse, or yes. And I don't know what time this takes place, but I believe this is in the Arrowverse. Yes. Is there a plot hole? I'm sure there is.
Oh, it just there feels like to be a bit of a plot hole, and the villain. I will say the least like interesting thing to me so far is the villain plot line and the stuff with her dad. It's very whatever. Um, the visuals for CW are beautiful, but the story itself, I don't really care. But trying to figure out what the whole thing is, and obviously they're like teasing some multi-dimensional stuff. And I know that there's still like there's different universes in the new Arrowverse multiverse post Crisis. So I'm like, is it are they in the same universe as the Flash? Are they still the same Clark and Lois? Do they remember Crisis? Like, what is that? Is it? And because of that, how does the timeline work out? Because it feels very modern day. It doesn't feel like 20 years in the future.
Mhm.
Well, I think I cut out again.
You did cut out again. Um, you were talking about
Okay.
the
I'm just
timeline
trying to
and
figure
how
out
it
where.
doesn't feel 20 years in the future, and they don't seem to be remembering anything from like Crisis or any other like crossover elements.
They're not mentioning Crisis like I'm sure Barry mentions Crisis or even Kara mentions Crisis.
Hmm.
And obviously part of that's because they weren't like close with Oliver, but I'm like, and obviously in the, I guess assumption would be like 16 years later, but it's still kind of weird. I don't know when it's supposed to take place, but I'm watching it. I think it's the best one. Uh, the DC shows that are on CW right now.
I agree that it's the best one on right now. And I didn't expect to hold that position. I expected to hold the position. And I kind of exclude Black Lightning because it feels like such a separate universe and also tends to feel a little higher quality, which could be because I pretty consistently marathon Black Lightning, whereas I watch the others week to week. But Black Lightning to me holds well as like an event series. But excluding that, I expected to say that Batwoman was my favorite of the currently airing shows right now. And maybe it would be like somewhere between Superman and Supergirl. And I still expected Supergirl to rank higher. I can't really rank Supergirl yet because only one episode of it from the season 6 has come out, and we're about to talk about that because Supergirl aired this week instead of Superman and Lois. So we did not get a new Superman and Lois episode. We only got a new Supergirl episode. But from what I have seen of all of the above, I would say Superman and Lois ranks highest. Now, it could be because in the beginning of seasons like this, they really do think through at least the first like third of the season to where the pilot has to flow into it, and it's, you know, they have to establish certain storylines for certain characters, and there's just not a lot of wiggle room for them to destroy something they've been setting up for a really long time because they haven't been setting up anything for a really long time. So there's just less room for error if they set up that one of the brothers is really wanting this power and then the next week he does not. It's not like, oh, we've had years of him wanting this, now he does, you know, like just use that as an example. So that may be skewing my perception of the quality, but be that as it may, there's a lot of really strong things that are not just potential but that they have done, such as showing Lois as a working mother. Just as an example, she is believably a excellently well developed working mother with only a few episodes out so far. She is somebody I'm interested in. I'm interested in her opinions. I'm interested in her romance, in her friendship, in her motherhood, in her investigative journalism, all of that. And this exact same universe has technically tried to do almost the exact same thing they're trying to do with Lois with other women before and other men and failed. So I do see that as a triumph because I know it could have not gone that way. We'll
Like
see
the
how that
closest we've
goes by
ever
the end of the
gotten to this
season.
before was Felicity.
Say that again, sorry.
Like, the closest we've ever gotten to this before was with Felicity.
Absolutely agree. And with Felicity, even then, it took them a while to get that balance. They still were doing some very archaic things with what I'll call her work life balance, not to be like boring an adult, but I'm a boring adult. They were doing some really archaic things where if she had a season where they were going to have her be the CEO of a company, they gave her a disastrous or non existent love life. Or they had a scene where if they were going to dive into her family stuff or something with her dad or her mom or whatever, they, suddenly her job was non-existent, or it was all about Mr. Terrific taking over, something like that. So they didn't really do some of the intentional things until towards the end. They got a little better about it,
Yeah.
probably when they got a female showrunner, but they didn't really do some of the intentional things they've done with Lois, where they have woven some of those beats together to make sure both are progressing at the same time. Her career within Smallville has to progress because she, as the matriarch of her family, wants her family to stay there for a while. That kind of thing is like the mental balance. I would say, like, as somebody who's not a working mom but is a like working wife and family member, right? Those are the things you kind of have to weigh together, and I appreciate seeing that with Lois, and also done in a way that is still very fantastical and superheroine and all of that.
Oh yeah. Um, and I mean, I especially like I don't like the villain arcs, and I will commend them on like intertwining. So far, it seems like everything's kind of intertwined with both the socio-political villains and the actual like uh, superhero villains. I obviously don't like her dad. He's just kind of there to be annoying, but it is interesting how directly and very early they just made her address like you were not present and you were not a productive force in my life, and I'm not going to let this cycle continue. And she was the one who very quickly and curtly cut it off. Like, nope, you can't be here if you're going to continue this behavior.
Yeah. Carrie in the chat says, I will not stand for this Legends of Tomorrow neglect. Carrie, listen, if you want to come on and defend Legends of Tomorrow, the floor is yours. However, you will have to be defending a giant blue teddy bear. So, like, what am I supposed to do? I can't have a lisp and defend a giant blue teddy bear. Like, the laws of science and communication simply will not allow. Like,
Carrie, I'll give you this. I occasionally watch random videos or random episodes of Legends just because I know some like a certain historical event is going to be happening, and I liked that historical event. For instance, I watched the Jane Austen episode. No context of the storyline otherwise, but I watched the Jane Austen episode and had a time. But I there's also a big blue teddy bear running around, so
she has a point. Here's the thing, if Legend just stays alive long enough and all of the other shows die out, it could by default become one of the best DC TV shows left. Um, I do know it looks like I think Flash will get 2 more seasons total. I could be wrong about that, but 2 more seasons total, and then I think it's over. Supergirl, I think, is it on its last
I think
season?
it's already. Yes, Supergirl's already confirmed this is her last season. I think
Yeah.
they filmed all of it already.
Yeah. So last season for Supergirl. I don't think it's the last season for Batwoman. I think we're going to get at least one more season of Batwoman. And then Black Lightning. I don't think we're on the last season of Black Lightning either, but I could be wrong about that. I've been avoiding Black Lightning news in general because, again, I marathon Black Lightning, so I try to stay unspoiled until the end, which is probably one of the reasons I hype it up so much. It's because I just get it all like at once. But I don't know. Maybe some of the other shows would seem better to me if I did that too. Maybe I'm giving Black Lightning an unfair advantage. I don't know. I could see them trying to do a spin-off of Supergirl with some of the characters from Supergirl, because I will say Supergirl has some excellent side characters. They've been setting up Alex with the Sentinel storyline. She's been really good. Lena Luthor is obviously, I think, it's almost a matter of fact, not opinion. I would say at this point, she's the best character on the show and probably the best character currently in the DC universe. I think I can stand behind that. Um, and of anybody, she would carry a spinoff the best. I'm not sure if she would get it, but she would carry it the best. And she's set up really well from the pilot, I think, for a really excellent storyline. I was so hesitant, as you may recall, with them bringing in Lex because I didn't want him to like take the Luthor spotlight from her because she was doing so well with it. But with Lex, at least now this season, they've separated her from him so much and so well. They have different goals and different everything that it is still giving her a lot of good material to work with. There was a really great scene in the season 6 premiere from this week, from yesterday, where Supergirl is basically like throwing herself to the wolves to save the earth. It's like a very classic move that I feel like happens in almost every single Supergirl premiere. And Lena is basically saying she's gonna, kind of help take care of this, that, or the other, and sort of thanking Supergirl for trusting her. And Supergirl basically says, I wouldn't trust anybody else to take care of the world. It was very sweet, arguably romantic. Talk about shadow and bone and me liking the hero and villain pairs. Kara and Lena, or Kara and Lena, or whatever, are absolutely a perfect example of like a good hero villain pairing, even though they're not romantic on this show, because this show's like, we gave you one gay person. How many could there be in the whole world? Maybe 2, maybe 3. I don't know. Um, the dynamic between Supergirl and Lena, though, has followed the storyline pattern that I do like to see in hero villain romances, where Lena has, it's now the 6th season, and up until last season, she was still having like villain slash anti-hero and like moments or questions or whatever, sometimes big ones. She did some bad things, she did some good things, whatever. And now she is in a place where, like, I would say she's clearly good. I don't know, fight me about that, but it took a long time to get there, such that when we think of her, we probably won't think of her as a heroine. We're going to think it like, we'll think of it as kind of a hero villain thing, but a villain that softened and turned good, and the hero started to accept her flaws. They could be romantic and lovely, is all I'm going to say. Nobody's listening to me, and it's not going to happen, and they're going to bring in like Mon-El or somebody boring for Kara to be with, and whatever, it's fine. I'm very happy for them, I guess. Carrie in the chat says that Big Blue Teddy Bear was the manifestation of a group of misfits' ability to come together to save time and space. That's heroic. I mean, it's heroic, but like...
But it's a big blue teddy bear.
It is a big blue teddy bear. And I would take the villain's side over the heroes on this one. Like, not all heroes are good. That's all I'm going to say. That's not all I'm going to say. I've got a lot more to say, particularly when we get to Falcon and Winter Soldier, when it comes to heroism. And he adds, and remember, Bebo loves you. Like, Bebo, you know what Bebo feels like the manifestation of to me? Bebo feels like the manifestation of every pep talk that Barry ever got that he didn't deserve. It's just like, we're being warm and fuzzy for like, the show is being warm and fuzzy for some reason, but with like no explanation, and it wasn't earned. And that's like every pep talk that Barry gets is like, oh, suddenly we're going to be nice to you, when really you just need to be sat down and told, like, stop being a brat and potentially killing people / the world. But like, we're going to be warm and fuzzy when we don't need to be. Bebo's warm and fuzzy when he doesn't need to be. And I know I sound like a bad person, but it's my reality.
Yeah.
Okay, Batwoman. I mentioned it a little bit. There's not really too much new to say this week, other than the fact that Alice is carrying this show, and I wish she was better integrated into it. Um, what else did I have in my notes for Batwoman? I have in my notes for Batwoman, everyone say thank you, Alice. Thank you, Alice.
Thank you,
I will.
Alice.
I like Mary getting to be friends with new Batwoman and getting unintentionally involved in like random lesbian drama. I just feel like that's very in character of her. And I will say that this show is continuing the DC pattern of head on addressing current events. And unlike other shows, like when Arrow, I still laugh to think about it, was gonna do like a gun control episode. It just sounds ridiculous. It just sounds ridiculous coming out of my mouth. Arrow was at one point gonna do a gun control episode, and everybody was like, this show has like not earned the right and trust to like try to bite off a big issue like that. Don't do it. Don't be like that on the nose with it. I was wondering if I would feel the same way watching Batwoman do a like abolish the cops, although that's not exactly what they say, defund the police, whatever episode. But I feel like they did a pretty good job. You know, like for a CW show. Like, don't get your like social justice information from a CW show is I guess what I would say. Don't expect them to handle it perfectly. You know, talk to your local community organizers, read a book type of thing maybe before you get your information from shows like this, but as shows like this go, I would say they handled it pretty well. I don't know. I always get nervous when shows handle stuff like this because they have the potential to put an issue in a space of a lot of visibility in a way that will make a side that I'm on, a side that I agree with, just look dumb or unreasonable or fantastical. I guess that's always my hesitation when shows like this do this. In a show that is intentionally cheesy and over the top and melodramatic and all of that, when you take a cause that I actually feel like I feel strongly about this, that, or the other, and you know I'm likely very much on the same side as whoever's writing Batwoman in terms of like political issues. But when you take an issue that feels like very like meaningful and you put it in a show like this, I feel like it can easily be reductive. It could be made cheesy, and then I'm left in a place where I'm having to be like, no, like this actually is a really important issue. I know they made it look dumb and they put it next to a talking shark and they did this, that, or the other, but like this is a really important issue. And that's kind of how I feel about it. I feel like Flash has done the same thing. You know, like all of them have done this. Supergirl is so guilty of doing this, but I think Batwoman did a pretty good job. So I'll sit. Carrie said, my favorite part of the Batwoman episode, Ryan and the Bat team deciding to actually do something good for the community beyond fighting crime. They're going to help open a community center. Bravo. That was the part that made me okay with it. That was the part that got me in the end. I was like, oh, they're actually doing something practical to where all of the fantasy of the episode set aside, they're actually doing something I can stand behind, and I can be like, okay, I know they handled this issue well because not only did they say the same catchy slogans that I want to stand behind, they did an actual they took an actual stand at the end. They did an actual step at the end that I can also stand behind, and it wasn't just like we're going to use a catchphrase for views. So Batwoman's still up there. Okay, let's dive into Falcon and Winter Soldier. Kate, did you watch the second episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier? Sorry, I can't talk. I've got Invisalign in my mouth. What can I do?
I did watch it.
This is the microphone.
Okay, thank you. So clearly, objective, like just speaking personally, I don't like the show as much as I like WandaVision. I'm sorry. No, I'm not. but objectively, it is a well written show, and I can appreciate what they're doing with the John Walker and him pretending to be uh, uh, Captain America, and basically them showing as a person he's a decent guy, I guess, but because of the role he's playing in all of this, like you compare how much Steve Rogers was like, I'm not going to be an agent of the government. I am a soldier, but I'm not going to be an agent for their will. I'm not going to do something that I think is wrong. And then you take the new Captain America, and he basically has no moral, he has no personal agency of what he's doing, and he's just kind of acting as their face and muscle right now. And then you combine that with the uh, natural and personal heroism of Sam and Bucky, and it's a very interesting dynamic. And there's plenty of comic book stuff that I just kind of didn't really care about, but it was an interesting episode, and I'm still gonna keep watching. But there was a lot of things that I just was like, okay, this is happening. All right, whatever.
Yeah. So there was one very glaring, distracting thing in this episode for me, and that was this fake Captain America. I have some words I would like to take back. I would like to take them off the record. I said last week, and this was unfortunate, and really this was premature. I said this without having taken in all of the information made available to me. All I saw of this guy was his mask and face or whatever, and I said that he looked like Ralph Dibny.
He looked like Ralph, didn't he? I too feel very just shell shocked by how incorrect we were.
Oh, thank God. Thank God. Kate, it's very
I don't know
important
if
that
it's the
everybody
nose and the
understands.
lighting. I think it's the nose and the lighting in that one particular shot, and then every other time, even with he has the helmet on, it's just like his nose, like the proportions look better. I'm just like, it's not enough to me at all.
Right. That's a very important caveat because I have slandered Ralph Dibny to no end. I don't like literally anything about that character. The actor obviously turned out to be trash. So this guy, something about like the face, I saw Ralph Dibny. Kate, the actual guy, like with the haircut and everything that he's got going on for him, he looks uncannily like my actual real life husband, like to an alarming degree. And I'm like sitting there this week watching this, like looking next to me, looking at the TV. And like he saw it too. Like my husband was watching with me. Like he saw it too. He knows, like, change a couple few things here and there, and like back when he was in, a student athlete in college, more so maybe, but like, overall, just like a bizarre similarity. And I'm like, I just said this guy looks like Ralph Dibny, a character I've like slandered to no end, and he actually looks exactly like the guy sitting next to me on the couch. I it was very distracting the whole episode. Like he's not the type of character I would like either, like I'm not a big like I am not in favor of militant government agents. I think he actually becomes a character in the comics called USA. Like this is not a character I would normally root for or like, but like Kate, he looks like my husband.
Well, and I also want to point out they couldn't pick a facial hair length and they couldn't pick a hairstyle for him. So every scene, it was like slightly different. Like the only reason I'm certain I knew who it was all the time was because he was wearing the uniform in every scene after the first scene.
Mm-hmm.
But that's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, it is with great regret that I tell you this character does not look like Ralph Dibny. That aside, I do have some thoughts on the actual show. Once I got past the little like moment of this guy looks like somebody I know. First note that I put down is, why are men like this? Why can we not work together? Like, I'm gonna perpetually contrast this to WandaVision just because I have to. And like in WandaVision, women who were strangers, enemies, on opposite sides of an issue, etc., work together in the span of 5 minutes better than these men who are supposedly on the same side and have had years to develop teammate skills. Women on WandaVision were able to collaborate like this. These guys, like, that therapist needs a raise. Like, what is going on here? Why are they like this? It's
Well, and what's so funny is like obviously there's frustration with how John Walker handles things. I'll like give him the benefit of the doubt of going like, well, like he doesn't actually have superpowers. He was just a really good guy. Like he's a really good soldier at doing his job, and like he looks enough like the last Steve Rogers and kind of fit the bill, so they picked him. And he seemed like he would be loyal to the cause and wouldn't question it. My prediction is he's going to finally start questioning at the end, and we're going to get a USA agent character, and then Sam's going to end up being Captain America. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Um, he, I think they're trying to push us for the first few episodes to not like him, which is understandable because he has to be like in the male arguments of like them just hating him immediately made perfect sense. I understood it, but at the same time, I was also with you. Like, yes, we don't like him. He did, even though you guys can objectively even say in the show, like, he didn't necessarily take the shield from Steve. It was given to him. It wasn't necessarily fully him that chose this. Uh, they still don't like him, but I feel like when they're in the battle scene, they should be able to work together. I mean, at least to the level that Agatha and Wanda worked together in some times. Like, Agatha was the villain in Wanda's story. While Wanda was also like an antagonist in her own story, she was the direct conflict, the one person she could physically fight. And there was a physical fight in the final episode, sure. But it took that long to get there. And the episode before that, we're seeing a questionable exposure therapy episode where no matter how much they're going to oppose each other in the end, they did kind of help each other for a very long time. Why can't we just like agree to disagree on some principles, but also like they're stealing drugs? Let's take care of that problem first.
I completely agree, but that's probably because I'm not a man, so I don't need to make a scene until I get my way and refuse to collaborate, compromise, or communicate at any point. Sorry to all the guys listening for the slander. I don't take it back, and my apology was insincere as it sounded. Carrie says, two stories I'm interested in: exploring the legacy of Super Soldier Program and the black guy who is Captain America. Strongly agree. That was my favorite part of the episode. Number two, I don't think the Flag Smashers are villains. I want to see more of them. Also strongly agree. And even if they are, I'm going to root for red curly headed girl regardless, just because I like her. Like, if I'm rooting for a villain and it's her, I'm okay with that. I can live with that. I was rooting for her in the fight. I wanted her to kick their ass, especially after they were like, we found the hostage. Shut up. You didn't find the hostage. Why do you see like a girl of slightly small frame amongst men and assume that she is a hostage? I guess I understand why. It's because men are terrible and they take small women as hostages. So like I get it. Um I'm still rooting for her. Carrie also
I
says the new Captain America looks like the old guy from the movie Up. You're right. And interestingly enough, my husband's been told that he's going to look like the guy from Up when he gets older too. It's all in like the jawline. It's like the very like prominent jawline, but like not the kind of jawline like where it's just really prominent because like you're really like fit and active and skinny. Like when my husband was like younger and a college athlete and all that, like yes, but it's like the particularly large jawline, it stays there even as you're older, and it's like one of the first things people notice about you. And I think like if you have that size and that shape of it, it just makes you look like you're related to everybody else that has it. I don't know how to explain this, but like that is one of the prominent things. But that, and also the eyebrows on this guy, like something about the way the eyebrows come very forward and it's like they're very prominent. And the nose, like there's this moment in the episode towards the beginning where they show him kind of like squinty smile at the sun, and you see like squints around the nose, the prominent like eyebrow shape, and the like large set jaw. And I'm like, oh, this looks exact like I know this fit. Like it's so bizarre. It's like copy paste face, but like in Captain America format. It's funny. Carrie says, maybe spoilery, but the redheaded girl was believed to have been a villain in the Solo movie. What was revealed to be a freedom fighter. That's how I see her character on this show. Yeah, I think we're gonna get some interesting, like, who's actually the good guy, who's actually the bad guy moments on the show, and I'm looking forward to it. I think a lot of what we saw in terms of like the therapy session set up for that, but the therapy session aggravated me. Did it aggravate you, Kate?
It aggravated me because it was kind of played for the joke.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as like there's a lot of comedy in WandaVision, they kind of did it like in a humorous setting, we're gonna have very serious moments and it's gonna be like thrilling or kind of creepy. Whereas this is like the inverse, we're going with a more serious action movie style, but we're gonna have that buddy cop comedy thrown in there, and the entire scene was that comedy. And there was only that one line that Bucky says at the very end that was serious, and because of that, while there was an emotional impact on that one line, it kind of lost power as a scene in general, which was a little frustrating. I think because I don't, if these characters are not characters that I don't root against them, they're just not like, characters that I really love. I wasn't as upset about it. I wasn't really as invested as in their emotional development as I would be with Wanda or somebody like that. Um, so I think what didn't bother me as much, but it was frustrating that they're playing a lot of the seriousness and the importance for comedy.
Yeah. Well, I see that we're running short on time, so I'm going to take 2 minutes to run through everything else I've watched this week, and then I will turn it over to you to close us with 2 minutes to go through everything you've watched this week, or read, or theorized about, or etc. So, 2 minutes on the clock. Here we go. Number one, Good Girls. That is my favorite thing I've watched this week, other than what I've talked about thus far. We had a return of some excellent Beth and Rio moments. We had Beth being extremely cutthroat. We had all the women working together again. Like it was just, there was so much good in this week's episode. It wasn't good in the way that it like felt like a season finale, like from a plot perspective necessarily. It was good in just like a really rich, engaging storyline. A lot of romance, a lot of heat, not like where it's just like obligatory sex scene because this show airs at 10 p.m. and we can. They didn't have anything like that. It was just like a lot of really good like tension. There's a moment where Beth and Rio are sitting together at a bar drinking whiskey. They barely have any contact at all. And then at the end, like he's getting up. He's been very stoic throughout the entire thing, but like, you know, on the inside, he's really proud of a couple things that she said. And he like signals to the bartender to bring her over the bottle of whiskey and then just like barely touches her arm and walks away. And it was like, just from that one hand moment. Like this whole show is like on at 10 p.m. They can have like whole sex scenes and stuff, but I'm telling you, there was more romance in that one hand touch than entire sex scenes. Take notes, but this is just coming from somebody who doesn't tend to like sex scenes, I guess. Did I use up my whole 2 minutes on that? No. Okay. Good Doctor was excellent this week. Again, we're just having a lot of really good, like, interesting shippy moments for them. They had there was a of the patients this week. There was a very interesting, is it romance, is it not dynamic? And of course I had to kind of be a sucker for it because it was two dancers. They were like a dancing pair who were frequently seen as a romantic couple, and there was a, are they actually romantic or not? And I mean, like, spoilers, they aren't actually in any way, but it was just a very interesting topic, near and dear to my heart. And also Park and Morgan and their little romance is very cute, very much friends to enemies to lovers to enemies to lovers situation. So can't complain. And I had Riverdale on the list, but I'm pretending it doesn't exist right now because they're making some bad decisions with their life. So that closes out my 2 minutes. I'm not putting any books on the list, but I will say I've made a lot of progress on Bridgerton book 4, and as soon as I finish that, that's when I start Shadow and Bone. And I did not really care, oddly enough, about Penelope and Colin in the actual Bridgerton series on Netflix, nor did I in the first couple books, nor did I in the first like entire third of this book. And now they're finally getting me after they're like already engaged. So we'll get there. All right, your turn.
Okay. I'm once again going to come in here and talk about my love for Elizabeth Olsen and that show, Sorry for Your Loss. I am 3 episodes into season 2, and it's a very different approach, I think, in I guess the general plot, because it was a show that could have been a single series, or it could have been a season, and it could have been multiple seasons. I think it really was only going to get 2 because of its location. It was a really great show, but it's on Facebook Watch. They're not going to get that many seasons. But the writing continues to be superb. I mean, the acting, it'll tear you apart. And now that it's in season 2, we're starting to get more focus on some of the other characters and the plot lines than I would say the big main one that we had in the first one, which is great. We're getting to see more about other characters. I have some interesting backstory as well. It just continues to destroy me on a deep emotional level. So just that again, and it also infuriates me that it didn't get the recognition it deserved on acting and writing. Also on the Elizabeth Olsen front, I have not finished listening to a podcast with her in it. Something you'd probably like. It's Jessie Ware, which is a cooking podcast, but they interviewed Elizabeth Olsen on one episode.
Oh, interesting.
And I only made it some way in, and my little fangirl heart has been crazy because she apparently knew the Haim sisters growing up and like was kind of close to one of my favorite one. I'm sorry I pick favorites, but I do. And so there's that. And I was freaking out about it. So
all your worlds colliding. That threw me for a loop. She knew the Haim sisters?
I know. Well, they're all from the San Fernando Valley, and I think I knew that, but I just didn't like, my cutoff goes, I don't track where they went to school. I think that's a little creepy for some reason. So I just never put it together that they went to school together. I knew like the middle sister, Aunt Danielle and Elizabeth were probably the same age. but I hadn't really tracked down because I just had never thought about it. And then she admits like that she knew them in high school, and I was like, whoa, hold up. So they were friends with Kesha, and now they're friends with Elizabeth Olsen and Taylor Swift. I just nobody knows about them, and they know everybody.
That's how I'm trying to be. I don't want
I
anybody to know
know.
who I am. I just want to know everything.
Yeah,
Love
so
that.
that's pretty much
Well, sounds like you've been listening to great content. I'm definitely co-signing on the podcast thing. Podcasts have really kept me mentally grounded this week. I've been doing the cliche liberal millennial thing and listening to The Daily every morning from the New York Times. So that's been fun. Uh, enjoying that. Getting my getting or keeping myself educated, I guess, in these trying times. Well, that brings us to the conclusion of our hour. I expect by next week I will definitely have Bridgerton book 4 to talk about. Are you willing to dive into Colin and Penelope's world with me and rehash that?
yeah, I'll come in with all of my controversial and heated opinions on that matter.
Yes, you heard it here first. Controversial opinions next week. Check your feelings at the door. All right. Same time, same place. I'll talk to you later, Kate.